for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast. And this week we're talking about wellbeing, but not in the normal way, I suppose, in wellbeing and resilience. We're looking at it in terms of why data is so important in terms of wellbeing strategy. And I'm delighted that I've got expert Emma Hossack joining me today to talk all about this topic. So Emma, welcome to the HR Uprising podcast. Would you like to just give yourself a little introduction?
Oh, thanks for having me on, Lucinda. I am the director of We Talk Wellbeing. I'm an executive coach, a personal coach. I love coaching and working with people that are interested in the whole person. So how you show up to work and how you show up at home are all linked. So We Talk Wellbeing is here to work with organisations, individuals and teams to really drive their resilience and wellbeing, but not in a fluffy way. We are not fluffy coaches. We don't talk about WhatsApp and switching off and sort of normal things that you get when we're talking about wellbeing. We are really interested in getting really deep into the data of individuals, teams and whole organizations so that we can work on programs that matter and that are meaningful. So I'd love to share this with you today because I think what we do is really different to many other businesses.
Yeah, because I mean, there is when we first spoke, we've done quite a lot on wellbeing and this sort of thing. But you said it's very different because you're looking at data, you're making it measurable. And I think that's one of the tricky things, especially at times when businesses haven't got lots of budget. How can you validate or demonstrate that what we're doing is actually making a difference? So how do you do that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see. I mean, down to the Pharma report that was the first report looking at the need for looking at mental health in the workplace. And it became a real thing because over the last few years, we've seen an increase of about 25% in the impact of mental health on presenteeism, absenteeism, and now we're looking at the quiet leavers. We know that when we are proactive about wellbeing, we see about a 5-to-1 return on investment, and that's the 2022 Deloitte report looking at this. So we've got latest data. But I feel why data is so important is because when coaching and training is done to you, it doesn't always mean as much as it could do. And when we measure data, we use something called the RAW index, which is workplace resilience and wellbeing. And we can look at how each individual is faring in their resilience and wellbeing right now. And it's interesting because quite often we work with individuals and teams and they feel that they're doing really well, but the RAW index will show up the strengths and the spots where perhaps we're looking at something that can be bridged. And the organisational reports through RAW are really interesting from an HR perspective because what we can look at is where your strengths are and where your gaps are in resilience and wellbeing. And we can develop meaningful, bespoke programs to each individual client that we work with. But data is so important because it creates a why. And we all know when we've invested a lot into coaching and training, quite often the feedback is it's being done to us and actually we're not really being heard. But when you sit in front of someone with their data, it really becomes their why, and they can really see the reason why going on a coaching or training journey is so important to them. And you know what? This doesn't just matter for work, it matters for who you are as a human being. The amount of people that have worked and come through our journeys that say, oh my gosh, I'm a better mum, I'm a better dad, I'm showing up better at work, because what they're working on is specific to them and it's not just being put on them.
So I get the sort of personalised thing, although I'm not familiar with the raw index, and I'd like to dig into that, because we sometimes do things with things like 360 feedback, gives you a data personalised thing, as opposed to just coaching neutrally. You're going in on something that's very specific. But this raw index, so WRAW is how it's spelled, isn't it? So is this a sort of, I hadn't come across this before, is this a known measure, a data thing for resilience then?
Yeah, it's one of the world's very few psychometric tests. Now, raw is fantastic because it's developed by the Wellbeing Project. So the psychometric test, what it looks at is the 5 elements to resilience. Now, people, whenever I ask, say, what does resilience mean to you? They'll say quite often, oh, it's just about being strong and bouncing back. But actually what this assessment does, and I'll talk you through the 5 elements of resilience, it compares you to other global workers. So for an organisation, you can say, well, actually, compared to other global workers, we're doing really well. Or you might say, actually, when I talk you through the 5 elements of resilience that RAW looks at, you might say, do you know, it's a really great opportunity here to work on this part. So the RAW index looks at 5 elements of resilience. And the first one is our energy. So that's like the fuel in your tank. That's your sleep, your boundaries, which, by the way, we're in 55% more meetings than we were pre-COVID. Boundaries are blurred. We know because we're hybrid working. So this has been a huge undertaking for us as coaches to work through with organizations. That's our sleep and our consumption. So that is the fuel in our tank. So energy is one of the pillars. And then we look at future focus, which is our purpose, our values, our why. Again, amazing for an organization where you test the whole organization and you can see actually what we're missing is our future focus. Perhaps there's some work we can do around our values. Do our teams know what their values are? And if we don't know what our values are, it's quite difficult to move forward and know why we're doing what we do. The third one is our inner drive. It's our self-belief and motivation. Again, from, I guess, might be quite interesting for HR is women show in 9,000 person studies run by the Wellbeing Project, show much lower self-belief than men. So again, if you've got females in your organization, this is a really good opportunity to coach around that. And then we have this growth mindset, this flexible thinking, how we see the world. Again, really great for leaders. Quite often, leaders are resilient. They're there because they're leaders. And it can be really hard to spot low resilience in your teams. So the flexible thinking and how we speak and our narrative in an organization is really key. And last but not least, in the 5 elements is strong relationships. Again, that's been really challenged. Quite often we're not in the office anymore. We're not having those water cooler moments or coffee. And we're not going to the pub after work. And communicating online can be really challenging. So we're seeing a big dip in strong relationships. That is coming back up. But it could be when you do a raw assessment with a team or a whole organization, you start to say, Joe, we're really doing well in our energy. That's going really well. But our strong relationships are dropping down. What can we do about that? And that's where we start to work on the strategy. So it's not strategy for strategy's sake. It's saying, this is what we see. What can we do about it? And remembering that what was a big thing a couple of years ago has changed. The big thing at the moment is financial well-being. We are going to have to be agile as we move through. We still don't know where we're at post-COVID. Companies are learning and having to change very, very.
Yeah, because I can see how the whole thing, post-COVID, the energy people the worries are going from health worries to financial worries, which actually makes people feel destabilized. You can see that all of these things fit. I suppose focusing in on those 5 elements of RAW. So from an organizational point of view, what you're saying is you can have an organizational metric, which I guess is the amalgamation of the people who have filled out the reports, their metrics, and you can also have it individually. So you would individually and get the amalgamated data, and then absolutely. And then you're talking, you can actually, as obviously what we're saying here is all of these can be improved, otherwise it wouldn't be there. So how would you go about improving this? If I'm an HR professional, we've got our data, we can see that actually we want to improve our overall organizational resilience. What would you do? How would we go about doing that?
Yeah, well, companies tend to do different things. So we have programs. We have an amazing 6-week resilience program, which we tweak and develop based on the results of the testing. So quite often organizations will say, we want this program, and then we get the test and say, actually, that's fine, but actually let's amend it and let's focus on the things that we're perhaps dropping down on. But ideally, a company would test and then come through our 6 weeks resilience program, which is 75 minutes a week. Everyone gets a workbook, they get tasks, and they also have online access that they can come back to throughout the year. And then we would have one-to-one coaching sessions with everyone that's filled in a test to look at their test individually. And some organizations then will highlight the people that want more coaching. So we'd have a combination of resilience courses that run people through that journey, individual debriefs so people can really understand their data and they can leave with next steps. And some organizations will then want individual coaching for certain individuals that are flagged up that could really do with working with us. And then we retest at the end. And we've got some amazing case studies about that retest, because what we're taking someone from is they know that they're on that journey with us. So they have the test, they know they're doing those 6 weeks, and the ones that follow it and are really engaged, we retest. And then we begin to look at strategy with organizations after that. So people come on this journey. But what I would say is we don't just end there. We want companies to be in a position where they don't need us. Yeah. So we're one of the only organizations that runs a diploma that's backed by the Royal Society of Public Health. So a company has testing, where people go through the journey with us, they get retested, and we would love to create health ambassadors with organizations so they can be trained by us to go and become health ambassadors, which is different from the mental health first aider. It's a more in-depth course. It has a certificate or a diploma attached to it. And so they can really get comfortable with talking around behavioural change and helping them set their own strategy for their organisations.
So that's interesting, because this overlap with mental health first aid. I was interested, that's exactly where my head went. And then you mentioned that. So it sounds like you're giving people more tools. Is it?
Yeah.
Is that what it is to actually help others be resilient? Is that sort of pay it forward?
And we know that, how amazing to be able to offer your employees a personal development plan where they can become specialists in wellbeing and resilience and behavioural change. They can be leading those conversations internally and working with HR to set strategy. The trouble with wellbeing at the moment is that it's not regulated. There really isn't any formal qualifications around wellbeing, resilience and behavioural change. You could do the mental health first aider, and that's a great start, but to really give employees confidence in having those, let's face it, difficult conversations and huge responsibility, we ensure that those employees that want to be those ambassadors have all the tools and a qualification behind them, because let's face it, qualifications also give us confidence. We've gone through that journey, we've had supervision, we've had assignments. You're going through that. So we start with a health ambassador, which is a couple of days with us, and we will coach how to have conversations. But if you really wanted to take it further, and this is also great for HR professionals, you could be looking at our diploma.
So could you give an example of if I'm an HR professional, I wanted to do the diploma, or anyone in the business, I wanted to do the diploma, you're teaching people skills that I mean, often HR have often got coaching skills and things like that. So are they specific techniques or questions? What would be an example of something that you might learn?
Yeah. Well, it is a 6-month course, so there's a lot in there, but it's around behavioural change. It's about conversations. It's around theory as well. So you'd be taking the theory, you'd be learning how to coach around those conversations. You'd be supervised in those. You'd be expected to have hours in building up your hours so that you have experience in putting the theory into place. If you wanted to see the curriculum on it, you could contact us and we could send that to you. But where it's used is we go from health ambassador, which is perhaps someone in an organisation that wants to get more confident in having conversations around wellbeing, but you could get the formal diploma, which would take you right from theory right into putting it into practice. And as I said, it's backed by the Royal Society of Public Health, so there is a formal body right behind this.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put the links in for people who are interested in this, because it just sounds interesting. If we were going, I always like to try and get sort of I need things that are sort of practical, I suppose, to get my head around them. So if you were working with me as an individual, and my baseline is that my energy and my future focus is lower than is ideal, what sort of things would you work with me? How would you help me increase it? How do we do that?
So that would be coaching with us. So if it was your energy, we'd be looking at your 4 areas. we'd be looking at, how are you sleeping? That is your first one. In fact, it's really important to notice that your energy is the foundation to all of your resilience. If you're not sleeping and you're not eating well and you're not seeing the sunshine or going outside and your boundaries are blurred and you're working really late, the world is a dark place.
Yeah.
So we always work on energy. It's a really good point. So if it was energy, we would be working on coaching. What are your derailers? What are your belief systems around your sleep and your food consumption? Why are you saying yes to everything? Perhaps your boundaries are blurred because you have a challenge or a fear around saying no. Or perhaps you're working for someone that isn't modeling that excellence. So that's around a different conversation with how do your organization set you up to thrive and your leader. If it was around your future focus and your goals, we'd be working on your values. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What are your core values? Do you know what they are? Are your actions aligned to them? Values are the absolute key to our resilience, because values give us a purpose and a self and meaning to life.
Mm-hmm.
So often, especially when you've been in a career, you get into a career, you move really quickly through, and perhaps you're not feeling good. And 9 times out of 10, that will be energy and people not aligned to their values. Are they working for an organisation where they know their organisational values? Because if you don't, there's no clarity.
Yes.
Can't align with them. So you're absolutely right to pick out energy and future focus, because actually those two are the ones that when you really work on, you see all the other pillars come up.
And it all sort of builds from there, basically, in terms of that. Okay, so that was quite helpful, because I can see it's not just about sort of, okay, get to bed earlier, etc., get sleepy, well, which of course it is, but that's more of a symptom of what you're doing is you're getting underneath why you're not sleeping well or why you're not eating properly, in order to create that sort of longer term intrinsic motivation to do it.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, people quite often go, oh, I'm going to sit down and look at our assessment, and we end up in such a deep coaching conversation, because the truth is I quite like to sit on my phone at night, okay, because I've got 2 kids, a business, a dog. It's my wind down. I'm not about to sit there, well, but you're not sleeping because you're on your phone. But actually what might be happening for me is, what are my derailers? What's my self-love like? Does it mean that I'm trying to give everything to everyone else, and then that might be my derailer and energy? There isn't a one size fits all, and whoever you sit in front of, your coaching is very different for each and every person. And interestingly, there's not a program that I've run that's been the same. It's always changed. So a client always come to me and say, right, we want to work on this, and it's always changed, because what you think is going to come up doesn't, and you have to bespoke it to what the client needs. And we're happy to do that.
No, I can imagine that. And it's interesting, because often people come, even with just basic training, people come along saying they think they need that, and as soon as you get underneath it, it's actually something else.
Yeah.
One of the things that we were talking about before camera and before we started recording, which I just was intrigued to maybe dig a bit further into, was you were saying that often most resilient leaders are not so good at supporting people with low resilience, perhaps because they don't have that awareness. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And again, how we could, help? Is it about self-awareness? How can we, prevent people unintentionally overlooking resilience?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, because when we look at data, between 7,000 and 9,000 people, leaders show the highest level of resilience than any other group. Male leaders show higher. And interestingly, the age group of 50 and above show high level of resilience. And that may be because kids have grown up, less financial concerns, getting sleep, but, having more time to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the challenge is that if you are really resilient, it can be really challenging, and for no fault of your own, to see lower resilience, because it's not something perhaps you're experiencing. So one of the really powerful tools we have is leader testing, where we test how leaders are setting organization up to thrive. And that would be if their team doing an assessment about how they feel their leader sets them up. And it's not about telling people off here. It's about just uncovering what's really going on. And that is amazing, because we run leader training to talk about what resilience is, how you have those conversations, what are the things you spot. And actually so that power is in the understanding and the empathy. And quite often we love to start with leaders, because latest Forbes report showed that a leader has more power or impact on a person's mental health than their doctor, a therapist. So it is so important to never leave that and ignore that, because the truth is your leader, if they're not setting you up to thrive, it will impact your resilience, but it also impacts your partner and your family. So the power of the leader coach work we do is key. And I will be honest, when we haven't done that first, that yes, there's been impact, but it hasn't been as big.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the last project we did, they said, oh no, we won't do that. And we didn't push it. And now they're doing it because they've realized, oh, we're actually faring lower. And now our teams are like, hang on a minute, why aren't you doing this? We've done this, why aren't you? And so it has to be a top down, up, middle approach. You can't just go, leaders, we're going to sign something off and everyone else is going to go through this training, but we're not, because we're feeling good. Yeah. It is about working together as a team. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So even though they don't need it, because actually their resilience scores are high, that doesn't mean they're going to be enabling resilience in others, because they haven't got that awareness.
We mustn't underestimate the power of a manager. We all know that a lot of the reason why people leave is their manager. How your manager leads your team, models their excellence, is really, really important.
I mean, so I suppose you could see that if this could impact retention logically, then, in terms of
yeah, absolutely.
Better
and as I said, the 80% of companies that report higher resilience also report lower attrition, high performance, and quality. So we know it's there. But I feel sometimes wellbeing is lost in that wishy-washy, well, let's work on fluffy wellbeing. But actually, when you work and start with data and you're retesting and you're looking at strategy alongside, it is powerful, and you will see the return on investment.
Yes, and what I like is this whole sort of the fact you measure it from in 5 points, so you can see how those. I mean, a lot of those things you've heard of in other tools, growth mindset. There's lots of these things, but how it all goes together and it all builds up to be something tangible, which you can then see how you can work on those different levers and have that impact. So it makes it quite powerful in terms of that. And to say, I think it's tangible, which also then when one of the things I often talk to people about is with training anyway, sometimes it's hard to validate why it's going to be useful, but you can demonstrate a return on investment potentially if you're going to measure at the start and end of these sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think it also holds people going through the program accountable, and not in a pushy way, but if I see something, I think, and then we look at what does that mean for you. So if someone comes to me and their test is showing something, what impact is this having on you? Where could you be? What does dialing up 2 bits mean for you at home, at work, as a whole person? And it becomes important because the data's there. I think where training often doesn't have the impact is where it's put on someone and then there isn't that embedding. So, I love to run programs where we run programs, but there's 3 coaching one-to-ones alongside that. So we can have a week on, and then let's talk about it. Let's explore what's come up. Then we have another, then let's explore it and let's start to see what this means for you. And that is brilliant, because we all know we're online, we're on lots of training quite often, but the meaning part comes where you start to have those one-to-one conversations.
So you're basically enforcing the reflection bit to make, because not everybody will do that, particularly with online stuff as well, because you get used to stuff washing over us and things, unless you have that time and space, or ideally a conversation to reflect on what does it really mean for you and how can you apply it. Then that's where you take something really useful away from it.
And I think, I'm working with a brand at the moment who look at like omni-channel training, I suppose. And what we've been doing for them is they've done their testing, they have a workshop with us, but we've been creating 15-minute programs they can listen to while they're walking. So we've just done one called Stop Overthinking, which was wonderful. It was 15 minutes in total, and they could learn strategies very quickly about how to stop overthinking. So I think, again, especially the Gen Zers, they have want to be sitting at meetings. It's about how do we connect to different people so that they're getting the best out of it, and that just delivering training. Perhaps we need to start to evolve that. And that's what we've been really, really excited to do, actually. We've been doing with some clients. Yeah.
Really nice different stuff. So go on quickly. In the last sort of couple of minutes, you've just done something on Stop Overthinking. There might be lots of people going, oh, I do that. How do I do it? Anything you can share in terms of if I overthink, what could I do to stop doing that?
Okay. So I guess you've got to think about yourself as a feelings detective. So a thought comes in, stop. Okay. And I want you to take the space and just start to think, what is the meaning behind that thought? Is it fear? What is it? Just start to take a couple of seconds, go, oh, that feeling is coming. what is it I'm feeling? Is it fear? Am I excited? Am I not feeling good enough? And then we find the facts. We start to think with our computer brain, not our chimp brain. I feel afraid, but the fact is, I'm doing the best I can. This thing that's coming in is just trying to keep me aware and on my toes. It's my friend. And I'm going to tell that friend that thanks for coming. But the fact is, I know why you're here, but you're good. I'm on my own. I'm doing the best I can. I'm really good at what I do. And what I'm really grateful for is, so we find the feeling, we look at what's underneath it, we label it, we thank it for coming, because remembering that your fears are there to protect you. Your brain is wired to survive. And then you find the fact, because that puts that feelings away and it finds the truth, and you find your gratitude. 3 steps. Feeling, fact, gratitude.
Interesting. So I can see how you're combining lots of other things that I've seen in isolation, which, like people doing the gratitude, the whole sort of as a mindfulness thing, but you're putting them all together to make them really practical. Absolutely.
What we like to do is easy, quick and meaningful. And I think when we can find things that are easy to do in this busy life, it's better. And one of the things we're also noticing is companies want different ways of working with us. So we're just putting together a new brand, actually, which is where companies can buy membership so they can get this sort of stuff at the top straight away for employees. So instead of, an EAP service, what you have is alongside that, you have us, where you can literally just tap into these sorts of strategies, always available to use along with fitness recipes, mindfulness, all the courses that we have. Yeah.
Great. Emma, so, I know you're in St Albans, and thank you to Diane, her colleague, who recommended you coming on the podcast. I'm sure lots of people are going to want to follow up with you and get in touch and know more about what you do. So if they wanted to do that, would you like to just share? Obviously, we'll put links into the show notes. Want to share how you like to be contacted or found?
Well, firstly, look at our website. It is a beautiful website. I'm very proud of it, and it's got all of the things we do on there. So that's www.wetalkwellbeing.com. We've got a very easy email address, emma@wetalkwellbeing.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. So Emma Hossack. Always happy to talk to organisations. Sometimes it's not the right time now, but you just like to know for the future. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today, Emma. Lovely speaking to you.
And you, Lucinda. Thank you.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now, you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.